Hey everyone, welcome to the 2025 AFL Grand Final betting preview. My name is Reese from investor.bet, and in this video, I'm going to go through, break down this game in depth. We're going to go through the betting information, the team statistics, where their strengths and weaknesses are, the history between the two sides. I'm going to share with you how I think this game is going to be played and won, who I think is going to win, how much I think they're going to win by, and the best way to approach betting on this game to make profit. Before we get into the actual grand final, let's look at the games from last week where these two teams won and played their way into the grand final. So firstly, on Friday night, Geelong 30-point winners over Hawthorn. They were favourites for this game. They covered the spread as well and went over the total points line. This was a game that Hawthorn hung in there for the most part. They kicked the first 3 goals of the game. Geelong responded, kicking the next 3. Then most of the second quarter was fairly even, but Geelong got 2 important goals before halftime. The first through Jeremy Cameron and the second through Tyson Stengel. That, plus a couple of behinds, got them a 1-point lead at halftime. Then this was the pivotal part of the game. 4 straight goals out of the break to Geelong pushed their margin out to close to 30 points. Hawthorn tried to fight back a little bit, 3 goals, but as soon as they kicked 3 goals, similar to the first quarter, Geelong responded with 3 goals of their own and 5 of the next 6 goals in the game. Once again, once Geelong had a 30-plus lead going into midway through the fourth quarter, Hawthorn responded, 3 goals, then Geelong got the final 2 goals of the game. So the key thing you want to notice from that is, even though it was a game, a bit of momentum, like teams kick goals in runs, Geelong never let Hawthorn kick more than 3 goals during any period, which is going to be really important here against this Brisbane side. Stats wise, it's a game Geelong really should have won with plus 26 inside 50. That kind of factors into a 30-point margin. Potentially could have won by a little bit more. They dominated the clearances, particularly at the centre, 20-5. They'll likely do the same thing against Brisbane this week, probably not obviously with a 15 differential. However, Brisbane are very good at the around the ground stoppages, but Geelong at the centre clearances do have the edge. Contested possessions plus 10 to Geelong. This is going to be a really important area against Brisbane, as Brisbane this season are 12-0 when they've won the contested possession count. Turnovers in the game, both fairly even as well. Then for the Brisbane Lions, they were the underdog, winning by 29 points over Collingwood, 100-71. They were plus 6.5, covered the spread there as well, and this game also went over the total points line. This matchup was fairly close throughout, and a similar game of runs. Collingwood kicked the first goal of the game, Brisbane kicked the next 4, Collingwood then kicked the next 6 goals to establish a lead at halftime. Brisbane responded after the break, kicking the next 4 goals of the game. It was fairly even throughout the third quarter, just a goal or 2 in it. Brisbane kicked the final 2 goals of the third quarter. Collingwood goal through Mason Cox, and then this was a pivotal period. Collingwood down by 12 points. Then the non-free kick to Jamie Elliott for the front-on contact. That was just all the talk following this game. Following that decision, Brisbane then kicked the next 4 goals and put the game away through this period with those 4 quick goals. Stats-wise for this matchup, Brisbane 381 to 312 disposals, majority of the ball plus 5 inside 50s. Clearances 45 to 36. As you can see there, Collingwood won the centre clearances. Brisbane 34 to 21 at the around the ground stoppages. 134 to 120 contested possessions. This is going to be one of the key stats you want to pay attention to, as well as the clearances. If Brisbane can get on top in the centre clearances in this game, that's going to be really important. Turnovers fairly high compared to the Geelong game against Hawthorn, so that's another slight area of concern for the Brisbane Lions going into this one. This season with their turnovers, Geelong give up the least number of turnovers, whereas Brisbane rank 8th in turnovers. So that's a quick look at what has happened the past 2 weeks. Now, looking at this game, first of all, the odds for this matchup. Currently favourites for this game against Brisbane. As expected, if they were to beat Hawthorn, they were going to go in favourite either against Brisbane or Collingwood. I think against Brisbane, we've got the 2 best sides of the season. Brisbane, the reigning premiers, and also their 3rd consecutive grand final. A couple of years ago, they lost to Collingwood, and then last year, comfortably beating the Sydney Swans. Geelong were the winning premier back in 2022. So these teams have been around the mark for the past few seasons, and Brisbane actually eliminated Geelong last season. That's this matchup right here, and Brisbane winning 95 points to 85 as slight underdogs in that game. Brisbane were able to come back from a third quarter deficit. Geelong had a 25-point lead midway through the third quarter in this game. The Lions were able to come back and win. The handicap for this game is minus 12.5 to Geelong, and the total is 170.5. Now, these sides have played each other 3 times so far this season. Firstly, in round 3, Brisbane winning as $1.44 favourites. Then they went down to Geelong and beat them down there at GMHBA Stadium, which not many teams were able to do, 92 to 51. We're going to break these games down in depth in a minute. They were $3.30 outsiders there. And then in probably the most important game of the season so far, the first qualifying final, Geelong 112 to 74 as $1.75 favorites. It's interesting to see, like, since then, these sides only played 3 weeks ago, and Geelong were $1.75 for that game. They ended up winning it by 38 points. Now they're into $1.50 and laying 12.5 points. So it's quite a significant change in the odds just based off one encounter, and what these teams have done since then. Brisbane went back up to Brisbane, beat the Gold Coast comfortably, and then that 29-point win over Collingwood. Brisbane, they've won 3 of the past 4 against Geelong, but Geelong have won 2 of the past 3 head-to-head at the MCG since 2022. Those 3 meetings that contribute to that was the one a few weeks ago, the one in the finals last season, and the third game was back in 2022. The underdog has covered 5 of the past 6 head-to-head, and the away team has been the underdog in the past 7 head-to-head. So home team normally goes up favourite here, which is the same situation that we have, but the underdog has been covering. So the away team has been keeping these games closer than the bookmakers expect. Geelong, they've won their past 5 at the MCG. Brisbane have won 6 of their past 7 at the MCG, that loss being against Geelong. So let's firstly look through their latest meetings against each other. So back in round 3, Brisbane 70 to 61, 9-point winners. This game was played in pretty tough conditions. Geelong had a pretty good lead late in the second quarter, out by about 32 points. Brisbane kicked a goal through Will Ashcroft right on halftime, got the margin back to 26 points. Then the third quarter was all Lions. They outscored them 4 goals to no score. They kept Geelong scoreless in the third term. And then the final quarter, Brisbane kicked 3 goals, 3 for 21 points to run out 9-point winners in the end. Stats-wise for this game, all the inside 50s and territory down Brisbane's end. They are +9 inside 50s, which is what you usually see in their games at the Gabba. They rarely lose the inside 50 count there. Clearances, both fairly even. Contested possessions, +4 to Brisbane. And turnovers, both in the mid-60s for this game. Player-wise, because I think one of the really important things for this game is whether Lachie Neale plays. I think Brisbane's chances, in my opinion, just really hinge on Neale playing this game, as Geelong are going to shut down McCluggage, because in the game back in round 3, McCluggage had 30 disposals, 6 clearances, and 8 tackles, and Brisbane were able to win that game. Then in the later game, in round number 15, where Brisbane won 92 to 51. The stats for this game, McCluggage didn't have as big of an impact, 22 disposals and 1 goal. But in my opinion, this game kind of was more about accuracy as opposed to a 41-point dominant win by Brisbane. That's what the final score says. But Geelong 6 goals, 15. They had 21 scoring shots. Brisbane 14 goals, 8 for 22 scoring shots. So yes, Brisbane should have won this game, were deserving to win, being the more efficient side going inside 50. But the scoreline doesn't indicate technically the closeness of this contest. Brisbane were +7 inside 50. Clearances, once again, were very even. +4 contested possessions. Turnovers are both even in the mid-70s. And +29 marks there for Brisbane, and 16 to 13 marks inside 50. But then when Geelong finally beat the Brisbane Lions, the key to that was shutting down Hugh McCluggage. You'll see in this game he only had the 14 disposals, 3 clearances. And O'Neill, they had 35, 32, Dunkley Ashcroft 30. All the other main players for Brisbane, plenty off the football. However, McCluggage had 0 impact. Now, Geelong are going to try and make sure that same thing happens again in this game, that McCluggage doesn't have as much impact. But if you take Neil out of the side, which he had the 32 disposals in this game, didn't dominate the clearances or anything like that, but obviously takes a lot of attention from other players as well, then I think it's going to be really tough here for the Brisbane Lions. And also, Brisbane lost this game that we're looking at right here to Geelong by the 38 points. Since then, McCluggage just had two 30-plus disposal games against Collingwood and Gold Coast, and Brisbane have won those games comfortably. So it's going to be a pivotal part of Geelong's game plan to shut down McCluggage. So if you're looking at him for disposal markets, that kind of thing, I'd be very cautious. Last week we saw Geelong basically shut down Jai Newcomb, who had huge games against Adelaide and GWS in the prior weeks and got Hawthorn those wins. They took Newcomb out of the game, made it very tough. As we saw, Geelong dominated Hawthorn in the setting clearances in particular, where Newcomb was dominant against Adelaide the week prior. So I think, yeah, if McCluggage gets shut down and Neil doesn't play, and with the calf injury, it's pretty tough and a huge risk for Brisbane. That's definitely concerning. Stats-wise for this game, this was the first time this season that Geelong won the inside 50 count against Brisbane. They were plus 13. Centre clearances 12-7. Brisbane won the stoppages. I think that's similar to what we're going to see on Saturday. Geelong won the contested possessions 136-120. If we see a similar number to that, Geelong will win this game. And only the 57 turnovers by the Cats compared to 66 by the Lions. Plus add to that 21 marks inside 50 to just the 6 by the Brisbane Lions. So we've looked at the games that have led to how we've got here to these two teams in the final. Their form leading in, Brisbane have won 4 of their past 5 games. Good wins in there against teams like Collingwood, Gold Coast, Hawthorn and Fremantle, all top 8 sides, but they did drop the game against Geelong, which is a little bit pivotal, and it's also at this venue. This will be Brisbane's 3rd trip in the past month down to the MCG. You also got to factor in they had the trip mid-August over to Perth. That was on the 15th of August. So they've had to do quite a lot of travel of late, and potentially that may catch up to them, considering when you compare that travel schedule to Geelong's, where in round 23 they went up to Sydney. That was on the Sunday afternoon. Prior to that, they hadn't left Victoria since round 18 when they went up to Sydney to play the Giants. So they haven't had to travel very much at all. Their last trip that wasn't just up to Sydney was all the way back in round 12. So beginning of June, the 1st of June, where they went over to Perth to play the West Coast Eagles. So Geelong, it's a significant advantage, absolute minimal travel. And compared to Brisbane last year, where I was really confident in them beating the Swans, you had 2 teams playing at a neutral venue. This time around, it's effectively a home game to Geelong, similar to what Collingwood had against Brisbane a couple of years ago in that grand final. Geelong, they've won 8 straight games coming into this. I was a little bit critical of them, considering their 6 wins leading into finals were all against teams who didn't play finals. Richmond, Sydney, Essendon, Port, North, St Kilda were those 6 wins. But they were by dominant margins, but it was just like against a lot inferior opposition. But they've turned up against Brisbane and then against Hawthorn last week. Aside from a little bit of a slow start against Hawthorn, where they gave up the first 3 goals and Dangerfield got a late goal right before quarter time from the free kick, Geelong, for the most part, were in the contest from that point forward, and they were able to really capitalise on their run around halftime either side of that. And I think for Brisbane to win this game, they're going to have to really put together a full 4-quarter performance. And I'm not saying that to be cliche. I think it's more about the fact that anytime Brisbane just aren't completely on, Geelong's going to be able to capitalise on that. I have Geelong winning this game by 16 to 20 points. So I'd lean towards them covering the spread, but I think there are better ways to play this. Like generally, the handicaps are pretty spot on in these big games, and often grand finals can result in blowouts either way, but the market's generally pretty accurate. So you just really want to be specific on how you want to bet games and not just look for alternative lines, look for ways to play it. But I think Geelong will be able to win this game. I think just that extra game and extra travel for Brisbane will catch up to them, and Geelong will have periods where they're able to capitalize, and if they're able to win the inside 50 count as well on the back of center clearances, and if they can just match Brisbane stoppages by shutting down McCluggage, and if Neil doesn't play, then it's going to be very tough for the Brisbane Lions. I also think Geelong just have a lot more attacking firepower. I think they had 13 individual goal scorers in the game against Brisbane a few weeks ago, whereas Brisbane, there's a heavy reliance on Logan Morris, who's obviously having a really good season but is very young. And outside of that, you've got Charlie Cam Rayner and kind of stuff down there, but they're all small forwards, which yes can be really important in finals. And either one or two of those small forwards are going to have to kick 3 goals each, in my opinion, for Brisbane to be able to win this game, as Geelong pretty much scoring 100 points every week. It's been 8 consecutive games where they've scored 100 plus. Brisbane also, they're consistently getting to around that mark, but they're generally falling in around the 85 to 90 range as opposed to exceeding 100. And yes, it's the grand final, there's lots of pressure, but I think Geelong just have that little bit more scoring firepower. If we also look at their stats for the season, they're the better defensive side of the two teams as well. They just rank higher than Brisbane in almost every defensive category and metric on both sides of the ball, plus the MCG advantage. I like Geelong to be winning this game. Efficiency-wise, Geelong are the #1 side at scoring shots per inside 50. So compared to round 15 where they're super inaccurate at GMHBA, if they're accurate here against Brisbane, I think they'll win the game similar to what they did in the qualifying final. Brisbane, they rank 12th in scoring shots per inside 50 in the bottom half of the league there. And then also from a defensive perspective, Geelong rank top 3 for opponent scoring shots per inside 50, whereas Brisbane ranks 6th in that same category. Now, looking at the total for this game, it's currently at 170.5. If this was a regular season game, then I'd be confident in it going over this number. Historically, between these sides, 4 of the past 6 head-to-head have gone under the total. 2 of the past 3 this season have gone under as well. The final was the game that went over with Geelong scoring 112 points in that matchup, which largely contributed to that. I am hesitant to say that I do lean towards the over in this game, just because it being the grand final, usually the number is set a couple of points higher than what it should be, as the bookmakers know that average bettor will just come in and back the overs regardless of anything else. So that's generally how they set it. But even at 170.5, Geelong are going to win this game. They're probably going to score about 100 to 105 points. And if Brisbane score around the 70 to 75, similar to what they did a few weeks ago, and they are consistently getting to that 90 mark, then that will push it over the total. I can see that happening. I think the only way it doesn't go over the total is if it becomes a very close contested game and both sides play very cautious, but that also kind of goes against how these teams play their matches as well, so it doesn't really fit their style. So I'd lean towards the overs if I was backing in the total. But overall for the game, I like Geelong to be winning. Expect that's how this game is going to play out. Lean towards the overs. Definitely just be cautious on McCluggage in the disposal markets. Obviously, he's going to be a main player that people are going to want to add to same game multis and that kind of thing. Put him in there for 20, 25 plus. Definitely refrain from doing that. Even if he comes out and has a really good game, I think Geelong are going to try to shut him down, and it'll just be a matter of if he can break that. But we've seen a few weeks ago he wasn't able to. Other players from other teams have struggled as well. So yeah, it doesn't look ideal there for him. But I do expect Will Ashcroft to be heavily involved. Zor's going to obviously be very important. And then for Geelong, they have the 2 main ball winners in Max Holmes and Bailey Smith. I expect both of them to have big games. Geelong do rank 13th in opponent disposal, so they're not a side that really trying to limit the opposition disposal, so you can still take Brisbane ball winners in there and that. But yeah, pay close attention as this game's playing out. 2 contested possessions, see who's winning the count, see if Brisbane are winning the stoppages around the ground, see if Geelong are winning the centre clearances. Those are going to be the pivotal things, and then obviously how much impact McCluggage is having on the game. But really exciting matchup. We had the Brownlow medal on Monday night. That was a bit of a, obviously Matt Rowell winning it, but the voting was a bit strange, that's for sure. Some very weird 3-vote games and who got the 3 votes for that game. You have the Nasai Wanganeen-Millera only getting the 2 games in the game against Melbourne, where I think he had 34 disposals, 4 goals, and only got the 2 votes in the game that St Kilda won. Then there were obviously a few games with Matt Rowell gaining the 3 votes, but having very little impact on those games as well. I think that they definitely need to sort out the voting for the Brownlow medal. There's been a couple of years in a row now where the amount and who's scoring votes from games doesn't really make logical sense, and it's probably being guided more on a feeling as opposed to actually what happened. So hopefully like the AFL will look at that, because obviously I think last night's Brownlow medal became a bit of a laughing stock. The general public perception was a bit of an embarrassment to the league overall, like seeing who got votes in certain games and how that all played out. So we'll see what happens for that, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, the thing that does matter about it is a lot of people like to bet on the Brownlow, and I probably should have spoken about this last week going into the prelim final round and into with the Brownlow medal being on the Monday night. Is for me personally, I never bet on the Brownlow medal, because at the end of the day, it's the umpires deciding who gets votes. Certain people know who's going to be getting those votes, like the upper echelon in the AFL know who's winning, who's voted throughout the season. As much as they say it's not revealed, it's definitely known within however many group of people who's winning. And that kind of thing, it's like the same reason you don't bet on fixed outcome events. And not that the Brownlow is a fixed outcome, but when there's other information that you're not privy to and it's not as much of a fair game, like when you're looking at a general match, like yes, you might be missing information about a player that's going to end up being ruled out of a game, or who is carrying an injury and is going to have their minutes managed or something like that. Like, yes, you're not going to have all those pieces of information, but when there's so much less information, and also when you're looking at games and going through and analyzing, I think this player will score 3 votes in these 5 games and they'll probably get 1 or 2 in these other games. Yes, they should, but as we've seen the past couple of years, it's not really based off of their performance in the game per se. Like there was a lot of examples of that last night. There's so many question marks around it, and in those kind of situations, it's better not to bet. Save your bets and where you're putting your money for better opportunities, and at the end of the day, just more predictable outcomes and safe opportunities. That's definitely what I recommend, because at the end of the day, every bet you're putting on is a decision to invest on that because you think it is a good investment. And you know, when there's stuff like that going on, it's just better to avoid it and look for those better opportunities. And that's just how to approach it overall in general. That being said, enjoy the grand final. It should be a really good game. Like, we've got the best 2 teams of the season, in my opinion. Brisbane, reigning premiers, Geelong, probably the most overall in form, and the team this year who's been able to beat up on quite a lot of opponents many a times. Both sides are playing really well at the right time of the season as well, so it does set up to be a really good game. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. We also have the NRL prelim finals this weekend. Friday night, the Melbourne Storm against the Cronulla Sharks. Sunday afternoon, the Brisbane Broncos against the Penrith Panthers. That'll set up the NRL Grand Final for the following week. We've got horse racing Friday night and Saturday this week, plus the Wednesday meeting coming up as well. So really exciting times. NFL Week 4 will be this weekend. Lots of really awesome stuff to bet on and make money. Thanks for watching these previews throughout the year. Hopefully they've helped you level up your AFL betting, make more profits, and just help you overall make better betting decisions to make more money. And stay tuned on this channel. I'll be posting a lot more videos. Like, there won't be no videos until next year. There'll be plenty of videos coming out going through betting strategies and things you can do to make money from your betting accounts, not just on the AFL, but all the other things that you can do. So I'll see you guys in those videos coming up.